1 second. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Lillian Live in New York City for another amazing segment tonight. Tonight, I tell you, it just keeps getting better and better. Tonight, we have Brenda Lewis. She is a licensed clinical social worker here in New York City. She's a psychotherapist, actually, with over 3 decades of experience in private practice. She has a creative approach that has helped many men and women struggling in the area of relationships and dating. She practices individual and couples therapy, including sexual and intimacy issues, helping people find positive connection and empowerment. In addition, her general therapeutic practice covers many areas of expertise in a wide variety of areas. She works with all ages, multicultures, backgrounds, and she helps illuminate the power of love and believes in helping people find positive connection with others and personal empowerment. So without further ado, my friend, Brenda Lewis. Hi, Brenda.
Hi, Lillian. A pleasure to be here tonight with you.
Thank you for coming, and I'm so glad that you're here. You know, it's important, especially these days with what's going on with the pandemic and in New York City. How are you doing?
I'm doing very, very well. And you're right, it is important as a therapist and just as a human being to be living through something as, unprecedented and in a way transformational, I'm hoping, in all areas is actually unbelievable on all levels. How are you doing?
Oh, well, I'm fine. I probably could use like a year of sitting on the couch, but I'm okay. So I know you live and work in New York City. What have you been like? Tell me what you've been experiencing.
Well, I think from the very beginning, as a therapist and with colleagues, we're human ourselves. So in a sense, we're navigating areas. It's new for ourselves, for our patients, for our clients. And, there was a lot of fear. There's a lot of uncertainty. And so there's different stages that I've experienced that we've gone through, from the shock to the adjustment, to technology, to different modes of working and relationships and relating, and, a lot of anxiety, a lot of vivid dreams. It's a very intense experience, I'd say. But I think that people are growing and evolving, and we need adjustment time.
Now, so your work that you did was usually in person, right? So how many people do you see normally in a day?
Well, it was at the beginning. I think I had to adjust. I'll be honest. My technology skills were okay, but they were certainly not unbelievable. And I would go back to back a lot in sessions in person in my office. And there's a certain symmetry to that really I so loved, and I do miss seeing people in person. But I have found that working on Zoom usually, that's a platform that can create intimacy, and I feel that there's really no excuse not to do the work, not to deepen the work. And so I have been really lucky, and hopefully the people that work with me feel the same way, that we have been able to still understand what is going on, whether new amazing things that are happening, be it the COVID riots, peaceful protests, major shifts in thinking, and all kinds of feelings. And life goes on even in a pandemic. So it's a therapist's job to help people have their lives and to contain it and to be there. And it's really
how did you transition from having the people in your office, talking to them face to face, to then doing it, on telehealth? How'd that transition?
Well, I mean, I think it was quite seamless because we were all going through the same guidelines. In other words, it wasn't safe to practice in your office, and we didn't even know about social distancing and mask at that time. And I couldn't be spritzing down the whole office every time. And it was feeling unsafe for everybody. And so it was kind of mutual and the right thing to do to segue into a online telemental health, we call it, a practice. In my case, it's mostly on Zoom for people.
I get that, but I'm wondering how did it actually how did it go over with the patient and with you? Like, I know you had to make it work, but how did it really work?
Well, I mean, the person would say, I don't think, their job had said shouldn't work, they have to work from home. And so I followed the very same guidelines. We all, have to live in a social world. And so I suggested the next session, the same time, of course, with flexibility, given what people are experiencing and going through and contending with, single mothers, essential workers. You're really covering every single demographic, and certainly in my practice, it's sort of equal opportunity, all ages, backgrounds. I love that, and I welcome that and that diversity and that connectedness. And so we just agreed through email or on the phone to set up the same session. I've been working ever since. I don't even know how long it's been. That's been one of the issues. People forget time. There's a timeless quality about this. But, I've settled in and made the adjustment now to this platform and live with the uncertainty in the hope that eventually we will all be going back, but only doing it if people are comfortable and safe, and I feel comfortable and safe.
So, do you have anything that is very memorable that you can actually speak about of the people that you've spoken to? I know you've also done volunteer work. I want to hear about that as well. But do you have any cases that have really stood out to you?
Well, I think that firstly, of course, won't go into detail just because of the nature of it, but I would say that we touch every facet of life, and I have to sort of acknowledge the serious aspects of it. But this is a virus, and this virus kills people, and it really hit New York quite hard. And so we're dealing with loss and the fear of loss, and we have to honor those people that have had losses or fearful of creating loss by transmitting the virus or giving it to others. And so that needs to, I feel, that is a special category, and that always needs to be close to home. I mean, we're not doing this as a social experiment. There is a reason. So everyone can be fine until they don't feel well, and then all bets are off, and we know why we're doing what we're doing. But that said, if people are safe and people have been responsible, then, I've had new couples come in. I deal a lot with sex therapy. I've had people move in together that weren't really ready to move in together, but because of the pandemic, there's good stories, there's not so good stories, and just really everything in between. And I believe in, with every person, just finding the uniqueness of their story and helping and empowering them so that they can get through this, but not just get through it, somehow get through to the best of everyone's ability while acknowledging real feelings and sad feelings and anxiety. But many people have actually done fine with this, and there also has to be room for enjoying being home and having more time. So there's always ways to reframe kind of everything.
You mentioned about people moving in together and so on. I know a lot of people that end up moving out from being together because they weren't used to being with each other that long. And I think even in Wuhan, where the virus originated, they talked about how there were so many divorces because of this. So you said you've seen a lot of people moving in and then some people moving out as well, right? I mean,
I haven't seen that experience. I'm a bit of a romantic, I suppose. I really believe in hard work between people. Maybe it's a different, we don't know the level of conflict in those relationships, let's say in Wuhan. And hopefully the first step, if you don't get along or someone's territorial, isn't to get divorced, to understand the enormity of what we're going through. And people have had conflict, and people have conflict. And that is also an adjustment to having space when you're together on top of someone all the time. But then also have gratitude, because the alternative, if you're on your own, to not be touched, to not have a hug from a friend, to not see a friend. So there's poignancy, I believe, in just really every age group and every demographic couples, for singles, for elderly people. There's just so many stories and so many truths and so many narratives. And sort of the job of the therapist is to help that person with their truth so that they can cope and maybe make the best of that circumstance for themselves. So one day they get back, you know.
Yeah, I know. And it was especially hard for the New Yorker because, you know, for those of us who've lived here forever, like me, like you, we went through 9/11. You know, we've been through a lot. And this is like a re-traumatization, right?
Well, I mean, that's a good point, Lillian. For some people, it very much, there are definite similarities, but there also, for some people, you know, some people are mobilized under anxiety, and even at 9/11, they're running down and they're going. There are other people that are just shell-shocked for lot of time. There are mental health issues that we have to keep an eye on with young people, with really everybody. And so, yes, any trauma can remind you of previous trauma, especially if that trauma, you know, really was traumatic or very dislocating. So it does come up. And I've known people just sit there in shell shock for like 3 weeks before it's really hitting. And then in as many cases it has been. I lost someone in 9/11, and now this has happened. And the catastrophic nature of the unknown, yeah, it's a hard thing for us all, the uncertainty.
Do you know that I read that 16,000 people moved out of New York City and they moved into the suburbs?
Well, people say it feels very quiet. I personally like that. I felt it was overcrowded. I mean, I felt that before this, ironically, you know, on a personal level, things weren't working. Things were congested. People were exhausted. People are coming to sessions at 8 at night because they're too busy. So there is a kind of restorative, compensatory thing. That is, they're like a seesaw, they're creating a more possibly equilibrium socially. But, you know, it's going to be interesting. We have to be curious, I think, about what this means to everyone, and not judge anyone if they're having a hard time, not judge anyone if they like some aspects. I mean, we're talking about dating. There are many people that really like dating in the pandemic because it's, you know, they're not rushing around and they don't have to doll up for a date.
Right.
And there's an authenticity about getting to know someone on Zoom or FaceTime or whatever platform or app, right?
Well, I will tell you this. I was dating somebody on one of the online apps, platforms, and I'm not one to sit and talk on the phone. I'd rather meet the person. And I was talking to the person almost every day. They would call because, you know, it was the pandemic. So why not? What else are we doing? Every day is the same day. And we talked and talked and talked every day. And then when it was time to meet, there was like, it wasn't happening. And he wasn't married. He had a health issue, but I mean, enough is enough. And I was like, all right, I had enough of this guy, because you know what? And I think even you and I discussed it. It's like he was hiding behind this issue. But when you said, you know, dating during the pandemic offered a lot of good things, also, you know, it offered things that, you know, maybe not so great, you know, with these people want to connect and they can't connect. And what do? You meet somebody and you stand 6 feet apart with a mask, and it's not a fantasy anymore. We're actually really meeting. So a lot of goods and bads.
Well, I always feel that I did write a book on dating a long time ago, but it's still germane, and there are phases of dating. And so maybe this phase becomes a little bit more real earlier on, in that you cannot pretend that there's nothing going on. It's like, how are you doing through this? And some people do better than others. You know, I don't like to call it an introvert extrovert thing, but there are people that feel very deprived if they're not utilizing New York or any environment all the time. And there are other people that are quite satisfied being balanced, maybe miss the world, but have, you know, time to do things, that cook more and be with their families more and have balance. And even therapists we've experienced, you know, some benefits, even though I wouldn't want this platform to continue indefinitely. You have to make it work for you. And in dating, I do feel that this is just an opportunity to to get to know people. And like you, Lillian, you had the good judgment to recognize this person's not really real. He just wants a texting buddy or someone to talk to, but he doesn't really want to meet. And that's not the pandemic. That may have happened. Possibly that would have happened anyway, or it wouldn't have gone further.
51 years old. So, I mean,
age doesn't create maturity necessarily, right? There are people that are amazing at all ages and other people unavailable. And it's really what's going on inside and the readiness. And so I do feel that there've been some amazing apps that have helped people to be in chat rooms, to talk, and even create friendships. I've made friends through this Zoom platform with peers, with colleagues who, addressing all kinds of issues about health and about everything that's happening in terms of the movement and which needs to be addressed. We need to have conversations, and we have to be able to not be afraid and bring out these things that have been repressed in people. And so, you connect with people even in a Zoom platform. There's 12 people there. You're going to feel affinity. And I say the same thing to people when they date. If you're in a chat room and you feel something, why not reach out? Certainly, what do you have? You have nothing to lose and only to gain. At the very worst, you've made a new friend in the dating world.
Well, right? I feel that way too. I'm pretty open, but I have to tell you, there's a lot of people that will say, "Oh, well, I've been on this dating site, that's no good, and that dating site is no good." And my answer is, it only takes one, and it depends on the person, not about, not the site.
It's these are just vehicles. It's like therapy, whether it's in person or whether it's on a telemental health platform. It's really about what goes on inside the person and inside the connection and inside the relationship. And there's always magic and there's always attraction and there's always longing and loneliness. Otherwise you wouldn't have tried or others wouldn't try. So I don't think you're not going to forget being human. People have lived through history with plague. So we have to be ourselves and our best selves, hopefully.
So as a therapist who does specialize in relationships and dating and sex and so on, tell me what do you want to say about sex?
Well, there's always lots to say about sex, and people do laugh with me because, sex is a very important part of life. And a person doesn't have to go out. If you're in a relationship, you don't have to go 5-star dining. I always say to people, everything counts and everything matters. Intimacy matters, playfulness matters, sensuality, a little romance. From dancing in the middle of the day, people have discovered, there are people discovering each other through time, making each other lunch. And all this can lead to more intimacy, more romance, more lust, right? And also dealing with issues if they have been there, like if it's a sexless relationship, let's say, to address those. Why not address these things now? And so always people, know that I'll say everything counts and something is always better than nothing. And it doesn't have to take forever and all day, and it's free, and so why not engage with your partner? And even with single people, everyone is still having sex, and it's just a question of doing it safely with more discrimination and with better intentionality about why you're doing what you're doing, because that proverbial hookup cannot be executed in the same fashion without a consequence. So,
right. I mean, it's, let's say two people are meeting now. What are they supposed to do? Wear a mask and not kiss, or kiss with the mask?
Are they supposed to talk, Lillian? And you're supposed to.
No, after they've done the talk and they're past the talk.
Right, and I depending if there's a hookup, I don't think that's what you personally are looking for, right?
No, not the hookup. After they've gotten to know each other and they went out on the six feet apart date. You want to kiss the person at one point. I'm saying, like, what are you supposed to do these days?
Well, it's sort of, people have real conversations about a lot of things, even before the pandemic, right? The STD panel, right? The why are we doing what we're doing? What do you want? What do you want from this? Is this a one-night stand? What are you looking for, right?
Right.
Remember, there's going to be a lot more vulnerability and
Mhm.
anxiety and even what I call crankiness, which is like when I feel cranky, sometimes it's a cover for other feelings, right? Anxiety, fear, exposure, lack of safety. So I think people just need to be more mindful. And there are people that have fallen in love. You know, I know a friend who got engaged in the middle of a pandemic. So there are all kinds of, because all the defenses went down, and instead of always thinking there's someone better,
Yeah.
you know,
Right.
the person in front of you may just well be someone who's great, and you just never were thinking of that person
Right.
way.
That's a good point. I have a question. How do you how does one keep the relationship of the man and the woman from turning into roommates or brother and sister or best friends? I mean, it's every single day you wake up with this person, eat with them. Is it, I mean, after a while, how do you keep that alive?
Well, I think that's a very good question, because that is really how do, it's like wearing different kinds of sunglasses. You wear one and you look at the person through a different lens, and you see them in a more sexualized light or with an attraction, and you have to learn to empty the garbage and then be able to let go and see yourself and adjust yourself in a more fluid way. This happens with all relationships, not just obviously heterosexual relationships. The challenge for everyone is at home when there's a lot of mundane tasks. How can you're really saying, how can you keep romance and spark alive? But that's
Yes.
the challenge of any long-term relationship. And there are ways and strategies and sort of methods that one can use to do that. But basically, I think it's a responsibility that you both co-create and say, let's do that. And so you're not complaining about how the person packed the dishwasher or didn't, and that these things are just the infrastructure, but what counts is the connection between you, and sex is an important part of that connection, as is space is an important part of that connection, as is, watching shows together, or people have individual hobbies or individual workouts or taking walks together. And yeah, I'm not sure if
Yeah.
that.
It's yeah, that's I know. I understand. Let me ask you something. Can you talk to us about the whole intensity of dreams during this time, what it means, thoughts, why, why do we remember them now? Why are they important? What we can learn, how we, how do we feel, that kind of thing.
I love that you're asking that, because it's not, oh, it's just a dream, right? I look at dreams as gifts. People know that I enjoy thinking about my dreams and learning from them and being curious and not being afraid of them, even if they're a nightmare. People have had very intense dreams. We have the time to remember them more, maybe. We have the more anxiety. We're more vulnerable. We're around uncertainty. And all of this, I think, fuels a better relationship with your own unconscious, which allows where the dreams sort of emerge from. So it's like your own script, right?
Huh.
Except not just any movie, it's your own movie. So the next day you can wake up and, wow, that was interesting. Why is that so disguised? What don't I want to know and look at? But maybe if you think about it, maybe it's not so disguised. Maybe it's about a feeling or longing or something you fear. Maybe it's something from childhood that's coming back to haunt you. So it's really fueled by kind of, in a sense, inner adversity or conflict, or by deep longings, or by just the existential anxiety that we can be living with more in the middle of life and death acute situations, right? And so people do remember their dreams, or have recurrent dreams, that they have another opportunity to decode and say, okay, now I know what that means. Isn't that nice? And I feel freer to move forward.
So, I mean, I've been having some dreams. I'll remember it for a minute when I get up, but then I forget it. And sometimes I'll have a dream that I'm really into, and I don't want to get up until I finish it and it has a good outcome.
Oh, that's great. That's kind of like you really, have access to wanting things to go well internally. That's very positive in a sense, right? That you're trying to work something out, and you're not going to wake up until that is done, even though it's in a dream state. And that's good, right? That's persevering in a sense, and resilience. But I think if you'd wake up, I think people are very judgmental and hard. Oh, I don't remember. It meant nothing. But everything means something. And so even if you remember a feeling, or you have a lingering, thought or fragment, it will come back to you. And if it's meant to come back to you, or there'll be another opportunity. The unconscious has no time limits, no real chronology, right? And it's unscripted, and yet it is very much the messages from you. So it will give you another opportunity. But I do think if you wake up in the morning with a fragment, just try to remember what that was and what it might have meant. And it may come back to you.
Wow. So you think dreams are, dreams are a way of sometimes working things out, or a longing, that kind of thing? Or
you know how people say sleep on it, right?
Yeah.
Right? And so maybe everyone does dream. We don't always remember our dreams, but if you're meant to remember a dream, the unconscious will wake you. If it's a very scary dream, or you'll just remember it first thing maybe, or later in the day, it'll occur to you when there's more time for the unconscious, when you're more still maybe, and it will emerge. And why not that's you. It's sort of like if you go within, you hear your own heartbeat. That is all you. So why not give yourself the respect that you warrant, and take a second to think about you, and not be frightened of it or push it away. And it can be people love working with their dreams, and they become less fearful when they see it in this light, I find.
Is there a universal meaning for certain things, like falling, things like that?
I do feel that there's a lot being said, and I attended a workshop on, spooky dreams, and there are people that feel that they're archetypes and images, and, anxiety images, being chased and things like that. So maybe the feelings can often attach to a symbol. And so I guess the answer could be yes. If a lot of people are having those same images, then we are usually feeling the same intense fears, right? And so, but I still like to go a little bit deeper and make it unique to you. In other words, if you tell me a dream and I have the same dream, they will mean probably very different things. People, right? Because people are different, even though we're all human and we all have the same longings and, generally speaking, the same desires and fears. And but everyone's way of getting there and everyone's journey is just very unique. And I love to get at that in a way. It creates the idiosyncratic nature of each person. And that makes individual treatment good.
I have to say, Brenda, it sounds like somebody could spend a whole day with you to find out about who they are and, what's going on with themselves. It sounds like, really they could do that. And then, and I have to say, this has really been a pleasure. Before we go, is there anything else you want to say, or let anybody know? I'm going to let everybody know where they can reach you right now. If you want to reach Brenda, you can reach her. I'm sorry. That's it, right? dearbrendalcsw at the website.
And then my email would be there. And Lillian, I just wanted to say that I feel what you're doing here, profiling people from all walks of life, from, serious matters, but in such a lovely way and meaningful way. It really says a lot about you. And so I really appreciated the depth of the questions. And it was really a privilege to do the work. I'm very happy to be a therapist and to be a human being, and to be even, in the position to be able to help people and connect through this very unusual time that we're going through. And so I thank you, Lillian, for giving me the opportunity.
Thank you. We meant to say, I touched upon it. You did say you volunteered. You told me that privately. You didn't really expand on that. What was that about?
I did feel this is the work. People struggled financially. There was job loss. This creates enormous anxiety, and we do have to, I was in my training, this is what we do. It's not about everybody being, paying the same fee. We have to be flexible, people that are curious. And there were some organizations, many organizations, and many of my colleagues, many like myself, new therapists, seasoned, veteran therapists, a lot of experience, just decided to be of help. I in particular love one organization that help people in the arts, dancers, and people in theater. I have an affinity for the creative and the artistic, life, and have an understanding. But I would have been fine with a healthcare worker. I would have been just as honored, but the work certainly different, maybe more trauma-based. So I just made myself available for some extra hours in the week. And it's, it doesn't really matter. I'm just so happy that people are reaching out and realizing that therapy and mental health and therapists are in therapy and people are in therapy, and that this is really a way to deepen your own understanding and to cope with what we are going through. So volunteering was just a part of that I added to this at this time.
Wow, that's really admirable, especially, going through everything that you've been going through on your own and then helping, patients, and then now you're volunteering. That's a lot. Well, I have to say, in addition to spending people wanting to spend a whole day to figure out themselves every day with you, it's a delight to speak with you because of that lovely accent that you think you don't have anymore because you've been in New York a long time.
That's
but
right.
You have it.
Like a New Yorker now, Lillian.
You don't really talk like a New Yorker, but it's very nice. Don't ever lose it. I talk like a New Yorker. But anyway, it was really wonderful to have you. And again, everybody, you can reach Brenda at dearbrendalcsw. Share everything on your social platforms. And Brenda, thank you so much again. And we'll be in touch. Thank you.
Thank you, Lillian. It was really lovely to be here and have a wonderful evening.
It was wonderful. Thank you. Bye-bye.